Morning, GitLab. This is the 12/10 summary retrospective. My name is Christopher Leffelholtz. I'm Senior Director of Development, and I'll be the MC associated with this. In the meeting invite, you'll find a link to the document where we go through the retrospective. Items that have verbalized next to them are the ones that we'll highlight in this forum. So I just want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to talk about various issues here that we think are important. And please, if you put an item in and you think it's something that you want to highlight, please next time around add verbalize to it. It doesn't just have to be the ones that Christopher picks out from that perspective. First off, I want to say thanks to everybody in development as well as everybody outside of development who's contributed to the code base. We had our second largest month in the last 18 months at 12.4 for MR rate. So yay, that's awesome work, everybody, for the month of April. That's also to note is since we went to a single code base, so approximately we estimated that 30% of MRs were because of basically duplications between the two code bases. So that's a really quite a stellar achievement considering that we did that back in August. I'm expecting May to probably be, if we hold parity, I'd actually consider it a win because we have less working days in May between Family and Friends Day as well as public holidays in various countries during the month of May. We'll next move to the section around previous items that we had for improvement tasks. And I've picked out a couple in there. Michelle, are you available to verbalize on feature flag training?
I'm here. So a little bit of background, if you weren't here last time, feature flag training has been a priority for us because there's so many loopholes and inconsistencies, and it's overall just very confusing for developers sometimes to work with feature flags here. So since last time, we have a feature flag training template. It is not added to onboarding yet, but it does give an outline of our current documentation on how to do things with feature flags, developing locally and things like that. We also now have a pretty good idea in the issue that I linked there of things that we need to cover for future training. And up next, we'll be soliciting volunteers to develop outlines, which I already have a lot of outlines put together, as well as videos and walkthroughs. We can add that to the template and hopefully make it part of onboarding and as a refresher for all employees.
Thanks, Michelle. Great work on that. Looking forward to closing that out here in the next few weeks. Darva, you're up.
All right. So recently we started working more closely with security and quality as part of the quad planning process. And I was looking for a way to measure the effectiveness of those interactions. So there will be cases that we get superb support from QA, but it wasn't really we weren't able to measure it. So I partnered with QA and security separately to come up with some labels. They already had labels, but we just added scopes to them. And there's information about those scope labels below and links to the issues.
Thanks, Darva. Appreciate the work there as well. Next, we'll move to the section of what went well this month. And we have several things that went well. If you scroll through, you'll see several things listed. I just took a few to highlight just in the interest of time. Nick, are you available to verbalize yours in Geo?
Yes. Yeah, on the Geo team, we've started regularly scheduled team coffee chats and a weekly Geekbot question that prompts team members to share what they did over the weekend. Special thanks to Sunjung Park and Zach Cuddy for initiating these efforts. And it feels like the team is connecting well on a personal level, and this has also helped onboard new team members.
It's great socialization. Encourage other teams to look at what Nick's team is doing and consider that if they don't already have some type of socialization kind of via coffee chats or otherwise. Next up, Mech. Want to celebrate a pretty big customer migration.
Yes, thanks for that. So yeah, we migrated a prominent customer to our 25K reference architecture. The customer sent a thank you note with improvements that they're experiencing on their new setup. And they're also benefiting from all the performance improvements that the team has been working on and shipped from all the recent releases. So thank you for that. This is a great achievement. And we're looking to also transition more customers to our reference architectures in the future. Back to, it's up next is John Hope to verbalize. John, you here?
Yeah. So yeah, this is an interesting one for us. We decided to focus on themes. If you're wondering like how this is different from just regular planning, we had some feedback in another retrospective that the teams could sometimes feel like multiple sub-teams of one instead of a team of however many, 6 people. And so from that point of view, we instead set a bunch of feature themes for the milestone. And it was really successful. In practice, what it means is we would have a feature channel in Slack for that given feature that members of the team would be aware, even if they weren't directly working on it. They would be aware of what we were trying to achieve as a team. So even if they weren't directly working on it, they were helping with it by working on other work around it. And it was just really successful. We ended up, by the end of the milestone, every group in the stage had delivered really prominent features in 12.10, and nearly all the side effects were positive. We had increased throughput, better iteration, improved collaboration, just a really good success and a real lesson for future milestones for us.
That's great, John. I'm guessing you're going to continue that. If you do continue it, can you make sure to update that in your team's handbook section, just so that we have a good way of following that if other teams want to try to work that same way. Cool. Matt, you're up next if you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. So on the Monitor APM team, we've been working hard to improve our metrics dashboards within the GitLab. One of the new features that we've been working on or wanted to add was fairly large, and to support annotations within the charts. We knew it was going to be large, so we did a good job, I think, in this sprint, and there's always room for improvement. But what we did was be able to break it down into 3 kind of main iterations. Then within each one of those iterations, break it down into a number of different issues that we could have multiple team members working on kind of in parallel to deliver value to our customers sooner. And I think it's something we've been working on to kind of keep improving that iteration value in the work that we've been doing. So I think this was an example where the team kind of really embraced that and did well.
That's great, Matt. Just FYI for everybody else, I asked Matt to also include this in iteration office hours, because I think this is a good example of where we should be talking about these types of things. Iteration office hours is supposed to be for understanding how to potentially break something down in a better way, but also to kind of talk about what worked well as well, to give other people ideas. So socialization of that and knowledge sharing. Cool. We'll next move on to the section of what went wrong this month. We generally tend to have more in this section because we tend on the things that we can definitely improve. So that's not too surprising from that perspective. Elliot, are you available to verbalize the one in Verify Runner?
I sure am. Yeah, so we, in the last, I guess over the last 4 months or so, we've onboarded quite a few members of the team. And so that's starting to show up as a lot more reviews as they kind of get up more to speed. And so we mostly work on one of the satellite projects in the GitLab Runner code base. And for that, we used to have a 1-to-1 ratio of developers to maintainers, and it was harmonious and lovely. And now we're going through a bit more of we're having to adjust some of our workflows and things, as we now have, I think off the top of my head, it's probably about a 4-to-1 ratio, which is still not terrible, but it just requires us to adjust and adapt to avoid the maintainers being a huge bottleneck. So fortunately, we can learn some lessons from the challenges the other teams have gone through to work on the main Rails code base. Yeah. Chris and fulfillment.
Yeah, just quickly on this issue, kind of speaking for my colleague, James Lopez is the back-end engineer manager for fulfillment, but we've been going back and forth quite a bit on the quarterly billing feature. It's been a couple different milestones now. The biggest issue there is just requirements changes and making sure that we're in alignment up and down sort of the stack and what we're going to be doing as far as the actual feature before we get involved with engineering. Spending too much engineering time going back and forth on the feature, and could definitely benefit from having alignment on the feature ahead of starting with engineering on it.
Cool. Thanks for that, sharing that, Chris. If anybody has any suggestions for Chris on those aspects or want to follow up, it might be worth chatting with him. CZ, you're up next.
Yes. So we had one planned issue that missed the milestone. I think when I looked at the issue, I think we, the team member and I, we think we have the opportunity to break the issues down and try to apply the iterative approach on it. Also, I think the issue also complicated by some context switch. I think there's some like learnings that or the retrospective we need to do on the issue. Also, I'm going to bring the issue into our next iteration hours to get suggestions from other team members. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for having the courage to do that. Appreciate it, CZ. Really want to make sure that iteration officers are used effectively, and appreciate that. Cool. I don't see Sean, so I want to ask him, but Jackie's on the call, and I'd like to welcome a product manager to the discussion. So I'm really excited to have her kind of verbalize some things in process.
Hey, team. So I'm here speaking on behalf of the release management engineering manager, Sean Carroll. This past milestone, we ran into a couple of friction points around code cutoff and when the release candidate and feature branch was actually cut, whether that was in the documentation listed as any time between the 15th or the 18th. And as a result, we kind of missed some cues on whether or not to have certain features and their feature flags enabled or disabled before the branch was cut. We opened up an MR and learned that the single source of truth was still the auto deploy documentation that our delivery team has up to date, but it was still a lot of friction in understanding how we should stage features behind feature flags, how to make sure we're relating those MRs appropriately. So we're getting everything in the feature branch when it's being cut, when it's between the 15th or the 18th, since we have no idea what day that actually lands on.
Yeah, that's a good example where we really, if we plan up right up to the deadline, we're going to be really stressing out about it effectively, because particularly because to your point, the release can be cut, and it can also be chose to be basically if there's problems with that particular release, they can choose to take an earlier release for actual submission for the hosted customer. So an example where product management and engineering management should probably work closely together to make sure to understand kind of what the deadline is, but also think in terms of being earlier than the deadline, kind of like you don't show up to a wedding in the last 5 minutes, you show up to a wedding a half an hour ahead of time from that perspective. But great feedback, and appreciate that, Jackie. Cool. Thomas, we'll move on to talk about COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that was noted in our retrospective, and we talked about in our sync conversations, is that as a byproduct of COVID-19, it just seemed like everybody was working more and not working on the schedules that we had come to expect from each other. So the byproduct of that was that interactions, notifications skyrocketed, causing people to engage more, which resulted in more notifications, which caused people to engage more, and we just stayed on that treadmill throughout the entire month, and it wore people out. That's not good. It's something that we're looking into, and we're trying to figure out really what we can do about it and how we can monitor it better. So
yeah, two suggestions to think about for your team. One is demonstrating taking time off where you can. That's one thing that I went through with the directors this week, is when are they considering taking some time off as an example. And then the other aspect that I'd encourage you to think about is turning notifications off and being adherent to it. It's always great to help out team members, and I don't want us to lose our good collaboration. But at the same time, understanding that, you know, if you're starting to feel the weight of being always on, then that's something we will really want to try to avoid and support our ICs in their efforts. Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Thomas. Ricky. Okay, now we're on to the section of how we can improve. And fortunately, we're at 15 minutes past, so got about 15 minutes left. So it seems like we're making good progress. Ricky, are you available to verbalize the one for verify testing?
Yeah, on the testing team, we're running into an issue where we're carrying over a lot of issues release to release, and still into 13.0, we're carrying those issues forward. I noticed that many of them were hanging around in the in review state. So we're trying a new process and encouraging engineers to look at the whole milestone board when they're going to select some new work to do, and kind of working from the right-hand side of that milestone board backwards. So before they go and pull something from the ready for development column, they maybe see if they can contribute a review, or they can verify that something is working on production for some other engineer on the team. The hope being we can kind of reduce the amount of work we have in process and increase the throughput that way, and kind of stop carrying so many issues over release to release.
That's a great strategy, Ricky. One of the things that we're going to definitely see probably as we go through the rest of the year is trying to work on our hygiene. It's really amazing how many things we carry from release to release, and we really should try to make sure we're being realistic about what we can achieve, but while also being ambitious. But we don't want to be unrealistic from that perspective. So let us know how that goes. I've edited as a follow-up for next time for us to hear about. Cool. John, are you available to verbalize what's going on in Static Site Editor?
Yes, I am. So Static Site Editor is a fairly new team, and we added 3 new team members in 12.10, and we shipped our first feature in the product. And so we went through a bit of growing pains from a team collaboration point of view, especially around our backend and front-end integration. But in our retrospective, we discussed it, discussed mitigation strategies to it. We updated our team page with collaboration guideline from our learnings, and so we hope to see an improvement in 13.0 as we implement this.
Cool, thanks, John. Crystal, are you available to talk about iteration improvements in your team?
Yes, so this is with the Monitor Health team. So the team has recently developed a new MVC of the status page for monitoring. And this project was broken down into 2 phases implemented in 12.9. It narrowly missed 12.9 because of kind of a foundational MR that missed the cutoff by just a few hours. So in 12.10, we actually got it ready to go very quickly. Kind of unrelated to our iteration improvement, we had another security vulnerability that made it almost miss 12.10. But as we were retrospecting about it, we talked about, instead of breaking down new features, new product like this into foundational elements plus the features that sit on top of them, to break things down into these vertical subgroups, and also to implement feature flags along with those. So by doing that, it's easier for us to collaborate closely with the front end and back end teams as we're working through development, because we always have a working subset. And then also at the end of a milestone development cycle, we don't risk missing the entire feature or delivering the entire feature, because we always have a working subset that we're ready to deliver. So the improvement that we are discussing moving forward with this type of feature is to incorporate feature flags along with the vertical subsets. We also discussed that this could end up being a very heavyweight process for the features that are not as complex. And so we need to make a decision about whether or not we want to go through the administrative tasks of breaking things down like this and feature flag.
Cool, Crystal. It might be worthwhile for us to have a follow-up on this. I didn't add it to things to follow up next time around, but I'd be curious to see if that's successful to share with everybody for next time around. Lindsay, up next for improvements in planning.
Hi. So we had conversations within the defend stage in our 12.10 retrospective, feedback from engineers that they wanted to get insight into what they're going to be building earlier in the process. They felt like by the time they saw mock-ups from the design team, there had already been so much effort put into things that the ability to get their voice heard or make changes was decreased. So while this is part of the product development workflow to include engineering at the design phase, we believe there might have been some lack of understanding or miscommunications that were limiting these engineers' insight into the discussions earlier in the process. So we've added a diagram to our page to clarify this, to our stage page to clarify this, and we're working closely with our UX counterpart to make sure that that communication is ironed out.
Cool, Lindsay. One question I had there is that diagram, is that unique to Defend, or is it just a clarification of what's documented?
It's a clarification, and we discussed whether we thought it was beneficial enough to propose a handbook change at a higher level. So we put it out here to see if it helped our team first as sort of an experiment, but it was discussed whether it should go up to the product level.
Cool. I added it as an action item for next time around. I think if it looks generic enough, we should definitely move it up to the top level page, because if there's confusion in your team, then there's probably confusion in other teams as well. It definitely is good for both our engineers as well as engineering managers to have visibility earlier in the process, particularly around UX and product management development, because a lot of questions might get answered if we're just at least aware of it, though not actively engaged in those pieces. So definitely let's circle back next month and see kind of what we think for that.
Definitely. I'll let Tiago, our new backend manager, know that, and he'll be very happy to hear that all of his efforts in this diagramming are getting attention. So thanks.
Excellent. Cool. All right. And in efficiency, Andre, are you available to verbalize your challenge?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Christopher. So this was a point noted by Thomas that he would like to see more intelligence added to DangerBot. And in specifics, he highlighted the possibility of working with time zones when suggesting reviewers and maintainers. This has been an idea thrown around, and there wasn't an overall consensus, but I felt it was important enough to highlight here so we can all discuss this and how to actually implement it in a meaningful way that is not disruptive for everyone, because I don't feel like it's a consensual topic. And John, thank you so much for adding the link there. I'll definitely direct Thomas and jump on there to add some thoughts. And that was basically it. The point is just to make the cycle times more efficient throughout time zones.
Cool. We also have an engineering productivity team, which helps with those. I added to the improvements for next release for Kyle to basically circle back with us and kind of help to drive that discussion. So Andre, Thomas, Jean, please all help Kyle in that regard from that perspective.
Will do. Thanks.
Cool. Mac, bring us home in results.
Yeah, so this one is specifically one incident that we ran over last month, and we were trying to come up with a mitigation plan, but this is an edge case where this given test to catch it needs to spin up 1,000 to almost 10,000 MR pipelines to a single branch to catch this, and this is testing at scale where we will only see it on GitLab.com or really large instances. So we would like to enlist help from the counterparts for this group to get better at testing small and testing smarter. There are some ideas around maybe having a scanner to look up the query analysis to catch this. So yeah, this is something we should be better at doing faster and in small iterations.
Cool. And if you don't get additional feedback or help from development, let me know, Mac, and we'll try to figure out how to make sure the right people are getting aware. But I want to make sure that folks understand that, these are the kinds of things that we want to be able to write code, but also be able to run code at scale. And this is a good example where we need to figure out ways to basically handle that. That also got added to the improvements for next release, where Joanna hopefully I pronounced Joanna's last name correctly, is going to work to drive that in Mech's organization, but we should be helping there. Cool. Thanks for that, Mech. So we've captured a number of improvements for next release. I didn't verbalize them or put verbalize next to them, but it seemed like at least these were the high runners for tracking for next time, though please consider improving in many ways, even if it isn't tracked. Ricky's in verify testing, Lindsay in the diagramming, Kyle for basically improving DangerBot, and Joanna for our CI artifacts and testing of 1 to 10K pipelines. And Michelle, you added feature flag training as well.
I did. I just wanted to give an update at the next retrospective to see what the status is from this one.
Got it. Great. Sounds great. Cool. All right. We finished in 25 minutes and 8 seconds. So I want to thank everybody for a great retrospective, a great 12.10 release. Thanks everybody, and have a great GitLab day.